Is it better to be loved than feared, or feared than loved? It may be answered that one should wish to be both, but, because it is difficult to unite them in one person, it is much safer to be feared than loved. Niccolo Machiavelli, The Prince, Chapter 17. In The Prince, Niccolo Machiavelli gave advice to aspiring rulers. It's a fairly famous book, written in the 16th century. And in it, Machiavelli told rulers how to manage armies, deal with the church, and hold on to power. And his influence on political thought is so great that the term Machiavellian is used to describe someone willing to, cast aside scruples and morals aside for the sake of power. And that quote that I just read out there it's probably one of his most famous ones from this book. He thought fear was more effective in keeping order than affection or in creating a subject's affection for a ruler. And so Machiavelli justified this position because he saw people as untrustworthy and, I quote again, ungrateful, fickle, false, cowardly, and covetous. Subjects would be loyal only as long as a ruler was successful. And I ended the quote just as I started that last statement there. Thus, a ruler could not rely on people's fickle loyalties. A ruler had to have backup plans, just in case his subjects decided to overthrow him or came up with something better. So, fear of punishment was thus seen as far better than love at keeping the population in order. Because, well, a ruler can punish anybody, but loving relationships required links of obligation, as Machiavelli called them. And what if a ruler could no longer pay or bribe, so to speak, to keep someone's love? What if he could not, run any social programs that kept people loyal? What if the treasury was bankrupt and he couldn't pay anybody? He couldn't pay wages anymore. And, one can certainly see why Machiavelli would think this way, because in his time, in the 1500s, governments were much less stable than they are today. Alliances, church politics, and intrigues can make political life very unpredictable. And we can see Machiavelli's principle of fickle affection, if we want to call it that, at work in the mercenary world. And during the era of mercenary warfare, one often saw mercenaries desert their employers when another faction offered more money. And he also did kind of put a caveat on this idea. He did say that if one must rule by fear, he must rule in such a way as not to be hated. Indeed, many people have admired dictators, even if popular opinion was against them. So it's, even if somebody does rule by fear, a lot of people do admire that, and because they kept the order, they kept the social order, and they got things done. But I was actually discussing this with some people last year, and someone there had a very good point. Though fear is effective, there will always eventually be someone that is not afraid of a tyrant. That person may take an extreme risk by standing up, but that action could inspire others to do the same and resist. And so a rebellion might not bring down a dictator, but an invasion from another country might. And those invaders will be seen as liberators. This principle can be seen during World War II when, the Allies came in and liberated Nazi Europe, like, say, France, Holland, and so on. They were seen as liberators, and the Germans were even seen as liberators in places like the Baltic states and other places like that, just as they were invading Russia. And mind you, of course, the Nazi Germans turned out to be just as bad or worse than the Soviets were. So, but initially they were seen as liberators because of the terrible harm that the Stalinist Soviets had done to them. So, and also we see another example in Africa in the 1970s when Tanzania invaded Idi Amin's Uganda. Like, basically, what if Idi Amin had not killed hundreds of thousands of people? Numbers estimate from I believe it was 300,000 to 800,000 people. So what if he didn't do that? What if he actually treated his countrymen with respect and took care of them and everything like that? And what if Tanzania was an Adolf Hitler or a Pol Pot or a person like that? So would there be a lot more resistance? One would certainly think so, although, this is getting really hypothetical here, and we can't answer that definitively. And also, there are many times when an oppressive country does invade another country that's less oppressive, and and the oppressive country still is still victorious. But also, if a leader is loved, people will be far more likely to support him or her. And, while they still have their flaws and moral mishaps, loved rulers can still be made of strong stuff. And, also, keep in mind that also history most often admires these kinds of people. The Abraham Lincolns, the Martin Luther Kings, the Gandhis, far more than history likes the Joseph Stalins and the Ferdinand Marcos. So yes, being in striking fear does work for many people. Stalin struck fear, and he wasn't taken down by a rebellion at all. He died of old age, but later on there was de-Stalinization, where basically his name was so vile in even Soviet times that he his reputation was basically destroyed. And there are many other leaders, such as Idi Amin and recently Muammar Gaddafi, where they oppressed their people so much that eventually people had enough. Somebody was not afraid, and eventually came up and took them down. But anyway, so there's the thought for the day there, and I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I will continue working on other projects for History Vice, and we will see you later.